In this video, we're going to learn about Pythonic looping. Looping can help us out in creating maps as well, especially if we're looking to create a series of the same maps with just some slight different variations, for example, different forecast hours. I'm starting again in the program_control.ipynb file that I duplicated from the previous video in if-then statements. If we scroll down within this notebook, we'll get to the next cell that has an example of looping. On page 2 of the Lab 8 handout, there is some text that talks about what looping does. And so what looping is doing here in our syntax is we're saying for some variable, which we're calling I in this case, and then in Python, what we need here is either some sort of what in Pythonic speak would be called an iterable, or in more layman's speak, simply a list. And so here we're using a function to do that, to create a pseudo list with the range function from Python from 0 to 10. One thing to note here about the range function, as in many cases with Python, this first one is inclusive, so 0 is going to be our first element that we're looping over, but we are exclusive or not inclusive of this 10. So this range that we're setting up is really between 0 and 9. And then within this loop, so we're going to say for the variable I in this range, colon, and then anything we want to occur within this loop has to be indented. And the proper indenting in Python is 4 spaces. It really doesn't matter exactly how many spaces you do. 4 is what would be proper, but everything that you want to do must be indented the same amount of space. And so what we're going to do within each loop here is that initially our range is going to give us the value 0. And so then we're going to come into the loop and we're going to print that value I, 0. Then we're going to come back to the beginning of the loop. We're going to iterate by 1. We're going to add 1 since we've not given a particular step here. And so then our value for I will be 1. We're going to print 1, and so on, going back and forth until we get to where this number is greater than or equal to 10. And then we're going to get out of the loop statement and continue on with the rest of our looping. So let's go ahead and run this to see what this looks like, and then we'll write a couple other examples. So remember Shift-Enter to run, and we see that we've printed out 0 through 9. Then when we got out of the looping, we simply printed a blank line, and then printed, I am now out of the loop. We can modify and do different types of looping. And so maybe a simpler loop would be for var, short for variable. Again, this is where we get to pick the name of the variable that is going to be our looping variable. In, and then using square brackets, we can put in a series of values here. So if we wanted to make different pressure levels, for example, we could put in 850, 500, 300, and square bracket, colon. And then now we are just going to loop over these 3 values. And so we can then add in a print statement here. We can add in a second thing if we wanted to do it, like print var times 5, just to do some math and print something else out. And then we'll unindent to then be out of our loop, and we're going to just print the statement all done here. And so if we go ahead and run this, we see that our first time through our loop, var is going to equal 850, which then it prints out. And then it's going to also print out 850 times 5, which happens to be 4,250. When we reach the end of everything that is indented, we go back to the beginning of our loop statement. And we go over to 500. So now var is going to equal 500. 500 times 5 is 2,500. Again, we're not done with our list yet, so we're going to go back to the last one. Var is going to finally equal 300. It's going to print that out, 300 times 5, print that out, and then finally it prints out the all done here. Okay, and so this idea of indentation is very important. Everything we want to have happen within our loop So say we want to make maps for all these different things, we're going to have to include in all of our map making pieces within this loop, everything being indented. We're going to talk about that in a future video. And so here is another example, a second example of looping now over times. So you can think of these as UTC times of 12:15, 12:45, 13:15, 13:45, and 14:15. And so now this loop is going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 different loops, five different elements. And so it should just print out all of those values. So there we go. That is looping. There are other advanced scripting abilities that we can do within Python. But given the nature of how this semester has gone, we are not going to do those formally in class. But please feel free to both read the lab handout, which contains information about how those things work, as well as then using the example code within this notebook or within the example script files located within the WeatherTech directory on JupyterHub. Thanks for watching.